So hello everyone, and welcome to this press conference from the Mayor of Montreal, who is together with Eric Alain Cardwell, who is responsible for mobility in the Executive Committee, amongst other things. The Mayor is going to have an introduction, and then we have a short video to show you, and then the Mayor will continue speaking. Thank you. Did you want to start it first? Sorry, Geneviève.
Ah oui, d'accord, parfait. Tu veux que je la mette, vous allez la mettre quand, la vidéo? On va y aller comme ça. Comme ça, je vais...
We're going to go like that. That way I'm not going to break the rhythm and I'll be able to look at it because I haven't seen it yet. So, exceptional measures, COVID-19. To ensure the well-being of its public and to favor social and physical distancing, Montreal is rethinking about the urban planning with an ambitious plan, the safe, active roads. So many streets with more space for both cyclists and pedestrians where everybody can move around while respecting social distancing. These arteries will allow to have more easily access to neighborhood stores and will favor local purchasing. The projects of the safe, active roads will be in two phases. The first phase includes 5 acts related to the greatest parks of the city. 37 kilometers will be dedicated to pedestrians and 61 kilometers to cyclists. A second phase with 6 axes over 51 kilometers will be added throughout the summer for even more active movement in all safety. With time, these will add tens of kilometers to the active transportation network, which is already appreciated all over the island. Montreal is proud to now offer over 1,200 kilometers of pedestrian and cyclist arteries all over its territories. Over 215 kilometers for pedestrians and cyclists this year, including Réseau Express Vélo. We are exploring new ways of experiencing the city and living in our city in boroughs. The safe, active streets show us what an inclusive, resilient, vibrant city is like.
Alors, merci d'être là aujourd'hui.
Thank you for being here today. Of course, I want to salute my colleague who is responsible for urbanism, mobility, and the Office of Public Consultation of Montreal within the Executive Committee, Mr. Eric Alain Cardwell. So today I am very happy to share this announcement with you for 2 reasons. So as you can see here, or as you were able to see on the screen, the first is that right now this is not an easy period for Montrealers. We are having a hard time seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Thank goodness the beautiful weather is coming back and it makes us feel better. But we have to have the necessary space to be able to be outside safely. The other reason is that we know this coming summer will be very different from what our summers usually are. We're going to have to continue dealing with COVID-19, and most of us will likely spend our vacation in town. That is why our administration is working very hard and has been for 4 weeks to propose a safe and pleasant city to all Montrealers, regardless of their age. To be honest with you, the idea came to me by being on Christophe Colomb with my children on bike, and I quickly realized to what extent the city was empty of cars, and all the pedestrians and cyclists were stuck in a very crammed area. So I thought we can't spend the entire summer like that. We won't get there. We have to be able to move this summer. So, with the car circulation and traffic that has decreased by half over the course of the past few weeks, and the fact that many Montrealers have adopted walking and biking to get around, that pushed us to rethink the sharing of public spaces. And I'm not alone to think this way. The evidence is that there's been an increase of 75% of bike traffic over the weekends. Faced with this new realities, I am very happy to announce that we are proposing for the summer season the circuit of the active, safe roads. And what I'm announcing today is the announcement of a temporary safe roads that gives priority to pedestrians and cyclists. And thanks to these, everybody will be able to take advantage of what Montreal has best to offer, its parks, its commercial arteries, and its family streets. In all, 112 kilometers of safe, active lanes and roads that will be created. And the boroughs are going to put 88 kilometers of streets that will favor favor pedestrians. We're talking about shared streets, pedestrian streets, slow streets, and temporary cycling roads. And we've seen over the past few weeks initiatives that have started up in the different boroughs. To that is being added the permanent infrastructure that had already been planned, that is 57 kilometers of bike paths that include the Express Vélo that we call the REV, and 60 new kilometers of local bike paths that is being planned by the boroughs. We have therefore a total of 327 kilometers of new pedestrian and cyclist paths that will be created this summer. If we add these 327 kilometers to the over 900 kilometers that already exist, we are now at a circuit over 1,200 kilometers to be able to move around safely all over the island this summer. This is one of the most imposing plans in the world, with 3 objectives that guided it. The first being to link up our great green areas. I'll give you an example. I was telling you that it is by riding on Christophe Colomb Avenue by bike that I realized that we had to make sure that we be able to connect our parks together. So on Christophe Colomb, we'll be able to go from Rivière-des-Prairies to the Fleuve Saint-Laurent River, but we'll be able to go through, for example, Parc Frédéric Bach. We're going to increase the lane so that it be safe, and we're also going to be able to go to Parc Jarry. Same thing for pedestrians or cyclists who, on a beautiful summer day, as a family, want to leave Mont-Royal, go along Mont-Royal Street, to go to a few stores, continue to Parc La Fontaine or Parc Maisonneuve. And the cyclists will be able to do the same thing on Rachel Street. So it really is with that in mind that we wish to put forward our large parks, because we are lucky in Montreal to have beautiful, large parks. The second objective is that this plan will help in those neighborhoods that are very densely populated, but also in those neighborhoods where there's not a lot of green spaces and public spaces. Amongst others, one of the elements that we're very proud of is to be able to make them more easily accessible to pedestrians and cyclists, the Gouin Boulevard, which starts at Rivière-des-Prairies and continues all the way to Montréal Nord. And we know, for example, that in Montréal Nord, there's a big deficit of green spaces. So this is a first initiative, and we hope that there will be more. Once again, we want to encourage people to go outside, to move, but safely. And finally, the third objective is to bring Montrealers to go to their local commercial arteries to support our business owners, because they are so important and they have great need of it. And that I'll get back to you in a few minutes. I wish to salute the involvement of all boroughs who followed and who helped out the city to be able to respond to the needs of the population. I remind you that setting up this close to 327 kilometers of bike paths and pedestrian paths is something that's never been done before. Everybody, I think, has understood the necessity of working really hard, because we can see that the scope of the crisis of Montreal requires strong actions in order to be able to respect social distancing while allowing people to have a breath of fresh air. So thank you to all the boroughs that helped us out. And I would like to tell you, I was talking to you about the Poussette project in Rivière-des-Prairies. It's going to continue, and on a Boulevard Gouin, which is going to be continuing up to Montréal Nord. In La Chine, the borough is going to set up a corridor for cyclists on Saint-Joseph Boulevard between the 6th and 34th Avenues. In Ahuntsic-Cartierville, it's 5 kilometers of protected bike paths that will be on Prieur and Soriol streets. In the southwest, Notre-Dame Street will be completely transformed with the adding of a large active mobility corridor. In Rosemont, the 9 super blocks that have already been announced are going to redefine safety in the sector. In Villeray-Saint-Michel, Parc Extension, a new bike path, the east-west, will be on Villeray Street that will be able to link up Christophe Colomb to Jarry Park, which is a very important park in that area. And finally, my borough, Ville-Marie. Amongst the things that are going to be put forward, there is De la Commune that will be pedestrianized, and on which we will also be installing a bike path. And just to say that all of Old Montreal will be transformed in a shared street to show its historical character. So I've given you a few bits of it, but there's a lot more, of course, and know that we really wish to deploy this over time, as the video showed us. So the first phase of the work will start at the beginning of the month of June. It will have a replan of Saint-Laurent streets, Saint-Denis streets, Christophe Colomb, Mont-Royal, Rachel, and Gouin Boulevard. So these are major axes that we are transforming. The second phase will follow a little bit later this summer to complete the network, and that is what is on the map. And more studies had to be done, and certain discussions have to also be had to be able to tweak things with our partners. Once the network will have been set up, we'll work with our partners to create and a setup of these spaces. For example, we could integrate cultural activities, sports activities, as well as historical activities. We have to reinvent ourselves this summer, and that is what we have the intention of doing. And for the time being, many of our partners from the cultural area and the arts area, amongst others, are raising their hand to be able to contribute to the success of this summer plan. I wish to say, and I said it earlier on, that it's a really quite like a magic trick what's been done. And I wish to say it because very often we have the impression that it's easy to, make streets into pedestrian areas. You just have to paint the floor and put 2 or 3 orange cones. But no, it's much more complex than that, because although our wish is to redefine public space, we also have to respect safety. We have to make sure that people, whether it be children or grown-ups, and also I want to say with that plan that in my mind was always the question of, the children who are learning to bike, who don't always have places to go practice, because when there are protected cyclist areas, families feel safe. But there's a lot of cycle paths where, that are not protected, where parents and children are more nervous. So we've thought this plan for them in mind, regardless of our degree of comfort as a cyclist. And of course, as a pedestrian, it's okay, but we want it to be safe. So that circuit is temporary, and it is for the summer and a part of the fall. If it is still the case that we need it, we are going to be in a constant state of evaluation, and this will allow all the population and all the public to be able to rediscover the natural beauties of the city of Montreal, and will allow us at the same time to test out planning, urban planning, and to innovate, and it will be useful for the future. One of the major aspects of the summer plan, I said it right at the beginning, is also to help out business owners and store owners to get through this crisis. So financial and subsidies have already been set up for business owners, on top of offering resources to be able to give them support throughout the different programs given by the federal and provincial governments. But of course, that is not going to be able to fill all their needs. And there is something where the city has all the leverage, and it is to give more space. And the city made a blitz of calls with 17,000 business owners to be able to survey them on the present context. And amongst the concerns is the need to have more space, to respect social distancing, as well as the safety of clients. We understand, we share these concerns. And thanks to the circuit of the active paths that we're presenting to you today, we are freeing up hundreds of thousands of square feet of public spaces that will become available for business owners as soon as they get the green light, of course, from public health. Concretely, that means that Montrealers will be able to take advantage of purchasing experiences that are going to be improved thanks to pedestrian streets such as Mont-Royal, Wellington Street, spaces that will be reset up to favor the use of cycle paths and pedestrians. And since we would like to see bars and cafes take up their activities in the summer, I'm happy to announce that certain boroughs have decided to offer the necessary permits to the occupation of public domain for terraces at a symbolic cost, as well as easing the installation criteria by quite a bit. Of course, there's the entire question of universal accessibility will always be respected, but we wish to support restaurant owners, bar owners, and business owners to be able to have bigger terraces that are going to allow for social distancing. So I can tell you that Ville-Marie borough is, of course, part of those boroughs that have decided to make terraces, we won't be able to say free for legal reasons, but at a symbolic price, which basically says the same thing. So I wish to thank the mayors that are making this important effort. And I know that for many people, the use of parking over circulation road for active transportation or terraces, it jostles people's habits. I understand that. But we have to offer winning conditions to business owners who fear more than anything to not be able to operate their restaurants or businesses because of the social distancing rules. Many have gone forward and proposed projects to us that are included in today's announcement. And I'm thinking, for example, about Wellington Street and Mont-Royal Street. Others are to come. And discussions are still ongoing with other boroughs and other communities. But I would tell you that generally speaking, it was very well accepted because the commercial development societies, or SDCs, understand very well the issues linked to the reopening of their businesses while respecting the 2-meter distance, which, despite the best will in the world, is not easy to respect in Montreal. And to end with, while waiting for this plan to become concrete, because it's going to start as of the beginning of June, I still wish to remind everyone of rules that are very important. And with the upcoming long weekend, I wish to remind Montrealers and to all those of the metropolitan area, so all the residents of Quebec as well, that the metropolitan area is still confined. What that means is that we have to limit moving around. We have to try to stay in our neighborhood and particularly in our city. I must also reiterate that we have to keep distance between other people. So, of course, gatherings are not at all encouraged. The 2 meters is important to keep. And, of course, wearing face coverings is becoming an extra tool when we move around. So I know that it's going to be beautiful over the weekend, and I wish to ask Montrealers as well to not invade parks. I am asking you, please. It is very important. We have shown that we can do it, and I would invite you, even if the sun is shining outside, to not invade parks. I would invite you, however, to use the new shared streets that are now present in many boroughs. And if there are none in your boroughs and you consider that it would be a good idea, talk about it with your local elected officials. We are there, once again, to support all boroughs to set up the measures that are optimal, the best means so that the population keeps good physical and mental health, once again, while respecting the rules of public health. Thank you.
I'm just going to have a sip of water and we'll switch to English. So today I am pleased to share this announcement with you for 2 reasons. The first is that it is not an easy time for Montrealers. It is hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there will be a light. Fortunately, the good weather and the fresh air is good for the moral, good for the body. So we still need to, but we need to have enough space for that to happen, to go outdoor and to be safe. The other reason why I'm very happy about this announcement is that as the summer is coming, it will be a very different summer for all of us. Most of us won't be able to travel, and we might have to stay in the city. That's why our administration has been working hard on the past 4 weeks to provide a pleasant and safe city for Montrealers. The idea, I was sharing that earlier, that is while I was biking with my kids on Christophe Colomb, it made me realize how there was no car, not a lot of cars running, while all the pedestrians and cyclists were kind of stuck in a very limited space. And I know I'm not the only one feeling that way. So from there, we decided that it was important to take action. With reduced car traffic in the last few weeks and the fact that many Montrealers have adopted walking and cycling for their daily commute, it made us rethink how we share public space. And I'm not alone to think this, as evidenced by the fact that the city's bicycle counters have recorded a 75% increase in traffic on weekends. Faced with this new reality, I am very pleased to announce for the summer season the Safe Active Transportation Circuit, a large, temporary, secure circuit that crosses the city for pedestrians and cyclists. Thanks to the Safe Active Transportation Circuit, everyone will be able to enjoy the best that Montreal has to offer this summer: its park, its commercial arteries, and its family streets. In all, it is 112 kilometers of safe active transportation routes will be created by the city center. The boroughs plan to redevelop 88 kilometers of streets for pedestrians and cyclists. This includes extended corridors, slow streets, shared streets, pedestrian streets, and temporary bike lanes. All this in addition to the new 57 kilometers of permanent infrastructures that were already planned, including the REV, le Réseau Express Vélo, plus 70 kilometers of local cycling network planned by the boroughs. This brings the total to 327 kilometers of new pedestrians and cycling lanes created this summer. If we add these kilometers to the 900 kilometers already existing, we get more than 1,200 kilometers to move safely on the island this summer. It is one of the most impressive plans in the world, and we're really proud of this. I would, of course, like to salute all the boroughs for their contribution and for joining forces with the city center for getting involved and proposing unique solutions to meet the needs of their residents. The first phase of work will begin in early June. It involves redeveloping Boulevard Saint-Laurent, Rue Saint-Denis, Avenue Christophe Colomb, Avenue du Mont-Royal, la Rue Rachel, et le Boulevard Gouin. A second phase will follow later this summer to complete the network. That's what's in purple on the map that you've seen, and more in-depth studies remain to be done and some of the conversation with partners. I want to say that the circuit will be temporary and is planned for the summer and part of the fall, and we will, of course, follow the situation as it goes. It will allow the population to rediscover all the natural beauty that Montreal has to offer, and at the same time allow us to test our new developments and innovation, which will certainly serve us in the future. One of the major aspects of this summer plan is to help merchants recover from the crisis. Montreal has already put in place financial assistance measures for merchants, in addition to offering resources to support them. Obviously, this assistance is not enough to meet all the needs of merchants, but there is one thing the city can do to help, and it is to give them more space. In fact, the city made a blitz of calls to 17,000 merchants to ask them what they needed in the current context. Among the concerns, there was the need for space to respect the distance and the safety of customers. We understand and we share this concern, and though the circuit that we are presenting to you today, we are freeing up hundreds of thousands of square feet of public space that will become available to merchants as soon as they get the green light from public health authorities. So like I said, the first phase will begin in early June, and the second phase will follow later this summer. It is a great achievement for our teams to be able to put this circuit in place so quickly. I want to say that it took them a lot of adaptation, a lot of hard work to come up with such an audacious plan in such a small period of time. One of the major aspects of this plan for the summer is also to help businesses recover from the crisis, like I've said. And two other elements that I want to reiterate is that this plan for me is crucial because it will help small businesses, and this is something they've asked us. So I'm happy to respond. It's also a way to connect all the beautiful big green spaces that we have in a safe way. I want to encourage families, the small ones and the bigger ones, to feel safe going from one park to another. We will also work through those big paths, working with cultural organizations to help us animate into those randonnées. And the third element objective that is very important to me is to make sure that in some of the very dense area and in places where there's not a lot of green spaces and public spaces, that we're able to push forward and make sure that those residents also have an opportunity to be outside and feel safe. So as an example, the Boulevard Gouin to me is crucial. It's starting in Rivière-des-Prairies, but it will continue in Montréal Nord, and to me it's just the beginning of that type of initiative, I hope. So those three objectives are very important. I think it's gonna definitely support everyone to enjoy the summer, enjoy their city this summer. And because there is a long weekend, let me end by reminding everybody that we are still confined here in Montreal and in the big Montreal area. So it is important to stay close to home, in your neighborhood, in your city. It's not time to travel. Keep your distance, the 2 meters. If you're not capable of keeping that 2 meters distance, wear a face mask. It's an extra tool to protect yourself, but mostly to protect others. And also, as you know, the gathering are absolutely not encouraged. And my last word will be for people. I want to, all Montrealers, please be careful. I'm not all going to to our parks this weekend. I know it's not an easy time, but we definitely want to keep our parks open. And actually, I encourage you to try some of the new streets that have been deployed in different boroughs, the one that we call the shared street and the family and active streets. So I want you to enjoy the outside, but protect yourself and others, and respect the recommendation from public health. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Plante.
Thank you, Madame Plante. We will now proceed to the question period.
Et ici, de la presse, peut-être si on pouvait juste aller au même micro en respectant la distance. On va commencer avec Monsieur Bisson.
Oui, bonjour.
Yes, hello. Madam Mayor, you talked about a lot of things. Yes, I know. And shared streets, bike paths, bike lanes. Amongst all of these initiatives, are there any where main arteries where car traffic is going to become completely forbidden? And would you clarify, please, in the other streets where we're having extra space, especially the commercial arteries, how many parking spots are we canceling to allow more space to pedestrians and cyclists? Yes. I understand that this is an important question, what the impact will be on car traffic. For Ville-Marie, since it is my own borough, I can tell you, for example, that de la Commune will now be for pedestrians and cyclists. That I can tell you. The rest of Old Montreal will be in what we call shared streets, that is to say, as we saw in other boroughs. Eric, did you want to have more information? Because it's difficult for me to tell you. I mean, there's so many different roads. For example, I go back to Ville-Marie, but the pedestrianization in the village is like every year. So we're starting it now. There will be no traffic. Well, what has to be understood is that there is a drastic decrease of car and truck traffic in our streets. So in the planning of the different roads, of course, there was always we had to take into account the bus roads and the trucks that deliver. We were in contact with the STM and a planning of parallel roads that will allow for the cars. But yes, there will be an impact on car traffic on certain roads, but globally, with the situation as it is in the summer, we don't think that it will be an issue. But maybe you were talking more about the parking? Yes. Inaudible? There will be traffic roads that will be closed down. We're making a compilation of it all. We don't have an exact number to give to you yet, but we're also deploying alternative measures. For example, with parking on parallel streets that will allow us to free up some space for certain of the spots that will be removed. Another element that I also wanted to bring, and these concerns are quite, justified, I would also invite us all to think about the fact that the city of Montreal is the epicenter in Canada. That is what the situation is. So for me, that requires very important measures. Doing nothing would be totally unacceptable, and for that I am quite categorical, and I am satisfied, that we're being asked by residents and merchants, but I'm taking very clearly, when we have a critical situation that we're going through, we have to have very strong measures to be able to help everybody to get through it, including merchants.
Bonjour. Est-ce que c'est à peu près 50 comme ce qui a été dit?
Is it like $50, what was said in Quebec? It's more or less. We have to have a rule. There are still procedures to be able to change all that. But yes, it will be, and even symbolic, it's possible that it might even be less. And also a rectification, we can expect at Plateau-Mont-Royal, where there's a lot of restaurants and bars, they will be able to have terraces that will be larger. Yes, that's exactly what the objective is. As I was saying, where we have full powers as the city is to offer space to businesses, the businesses that don't necessarily have, even if it's just to keep the 2 meter when you're waiting outside. And the health corridors have allowed us to test it out. It was the first stage where we're able to say and how it works. And merchants said, oh, thank you, it's so much easier to breathe. This is the further stage. But yes, it will be to allow restaurant owners, bars, or even just businesses. I'm thinking about somebody who sells ice cream or something like that to have terraces, and will even lighten up the way that it's done, because traditionally we have very strict rules on how to build a terrace, all the details. We are going to lighten that up to, we really want to minimize. We want to help out, really. Together with that, will people be able to more easily consume alcohol in the street? Will there be an easing of those rules? Well, that doesn't just depend on us. But listen, I can't answer right now, but that's not a bad idea. But necessarily there are rules that go beyond just Montreal. These are really, alcohol consumption rules, and we know that it's pretty complex. But I've always appreciated the model of, the beer gardens that are seen in Germany or elsewhere, where you can have, like a game area, and not far there's the parents who can have a drink on a terrace. But it's not just up to Montreal, but I find that these are interesting. When you think of thinking outside the box and innovating, that could be interesting. Because right now you talked about the fact that it's a test, but eventually you might inspire yourself with that to, maybe decrease or increase pedestrian streets and bike lanes. Yes, and we are seizing, if you will, this opportunity. People are asking us, so for us it's a responsible thing to do, taking into account the present crisis and the impact that it's having on merchants and Montrealers. But we'll see how people react, how people use it. But it's possible that some things may stay. Yes, absolutely. But we'll do some monitoring.
Question de Benoît Chapdelaine de Radio-Canada. For the
pedestrianization of Mont-Royal, does that require the entire street will have no car traffic? Well, right now we are developing a model together with the Plateau-Mont-Royal borough in order to allow deliveries, to allow alternative bus lanes. But yes, in the heart of the Plateau-Mont-Royal, we are considering a full pedestrianization of Mont-Royal. Something about authorizing Quebec the opening of terraces. Well, right now we are preparing ourselves. That's pretty much what it is. We have good hopes that the situation will improve in terms of public health, that the results will show us that we are in control of, for example, the community spread. And of course, we're going to be following the recommendations of public health. When they give us the green light to be able to reopen bars, And restaurants, well, will be ready. And we'll be very happy to be able to say action and reaction. And merchants will be able to, they won't need to wait.
Madame Plante, Los Angeles impose.
Madame Plante, LA is imposing mandatorily the use of masks. Why not in Montreal? Well, listen, yesterday the Premier and myself were very clear on that. We are considering it. We're not closed to the idea at all. However, since the beginning for me, there are winning conditions that have to be met first. For example, massive distribution. I'm very happy that the Premier agreed with my request to help Montrealers, whether in public transportation, but also in the most affected neighborhoods. And once we've received the masks, we'll be able to distribute them massively, and it will allow us to have an awareness-raising campaign in public transportation, but not just in Montreal. In the entire metropolitan area, there has to be a level of coherence. So we're not close to the idea at all, but we want to do things as they have to be done, because forcing people to wear a mask when there aren't enough that are available, or where people for different reasons don't have access to it, I consider that it would be counterproductive. But we are open, yes. Mr. Caldwell, you just said that Mont-Royal clearly was going to be entirely pedestrianized, no cars. Will there be others? We're looking at the different models. We have to give room to pedestrians, and we have to organize lanes for cyclists. So we want to have more space for cyclists, more space for pedestrians, and that is what is guiding our choices. So in certain places, if we want to conciliate delivery, bus, parallel arteries for circulation, it's possible that in other places there will be pedestrianization, but clearly in every case we have to find the right mix where there's more room for pedestrians, more room for cyclists, but where we also accommodate public transportation and deliveries. But that is one example. We'll manage to do it with Mont-Royal Street. The mayor talked about de la Commune Street, where, all the space will be given to pedestrians and cyclists. And we're looking at all of the lanes right now. It's possible that there are others, but the clear orientation is not to just remove car traffic, but it is really to enlarge lanes for pedestrians and cyclists. And for example, in Mont-Royal, so the buses will continue circulating and deliveries will be allowed. And Verdun, Bor also announced Wellington Street. Yes. What will Boulevard Saint-Laurent and Saint-Denis streets look like? Well, Saint-Denis already had a REV that was planned for, so we're starting it. The REV, which is like big cycling lanes that are unidirectional, so that's very interesting. For the sidewalks, there will be more room for pedestrians as well. And basically what is new is, especially Saint-Laurent, I would say that it is, because Saint-Urbain can already be cyclable. We're going to broaden it because it's a direct lane to be able to go down. Whereas Saint-Laurent Street, we're going to really be putting more room, a real bike lane, and more room for pedestrians as well. So we're going to broaden it. Is that, yeah? Okay. As a follow-up, that means that car traffic is going to be maintained? Yes. But, they're going to have less room. We can't make the streets broader. So if we want more room for pedestrians and cyclists, that means that we have to rebalance the sharing of the road. I think that's what it is about, this exercise as well. English now?
Truckers and delivery people are concerned about access and mobility on city streets. They say they have not been consulted either. What do you say to their concern?
I've talked to Marc Cadieux from the trucking industry last night. I reassured him, telling him that we'll adapt. The deliveries is essential for local business, and we have to give access to delivery. Mm-hmm. And by the planning of that network, we've managed to keep trucking routes for every bits of the island. So we're in contact with them. I spoke to Mr. Cadieux last night, and we'll find all the solution needed.
And also, I think it's important to keep in mind that I can take example like the Rue Wellington or dans le Vieux-Montréal également, or in Plateau-Mont-Royal, it is actually the Merchants Association who have come to us saying, help us. Help us find more solutions. So I think it's also important to keep that in mind, that it's not something we're imposing on anyone. It's been a collaborative work. And of course, regarding delivery, it's something we have in mind and we will continue to work on. We still have some time before we start to implement. Not a lot of time, but...
Maintenant, the CBC, you say we may have to stay in the city this summer. Is confining Montreal or preventing people from leaving the island a possibility?
I'm not there at all, and ultimately it wouldn't be my decision. It would be public health decision. I feel confident that with the decision that we took yesterday, the Premier and myself regarding school was the right thing to do to limit or to minimize the risk of community contamination. I'm still hoping that businesses will open on the 25th, and also that all the energy and the testing strategy that it has increased will support the City of Montreal to reopen, but it has to be done in a slow, coherent way. But I definitely think that, we see it now that our life has been changed, and a lot of Montrealers won't travel abroad, or maybe they will actually stay in the cities for different reasons. So we need to adapt to that. And I want to make sure that my city that Montrealers feels like it's their city, and they can enjoy and they can have a pleasant time while having to deal with this big pressure of the COVID. It's very important to me.
Deuxième question. What will Montrealers be able to do this summer besides walking around and sitting alone in a park? Will we be able to eat at food trucks, swim in a pool, use playground structures like splash pads?
Well, there is a lot of questions in this question, but we are definitely putting together, we'll be able to share as soon as possible what installation, public installation and infrastructure will be open or not. I'm thinking about pools, I'm thinking about libraries, parks will remain open, of course. But I definitely, as a city, now I need to ask the approval of the public health authorities for any of those installations. So I'm definitely looking forward to share what will be open. But one thing I can say is that with this plan, this summer plan we are sharing today, our hope is also to involve the cultural and art sector on how we could do some animation, how can we have fun and enjoy our city? And there's so many possibilities, but we need to think outside of the box. And I'm also, I've shared this with our Premier yesterday, that now that school, we know it's closed, we need to think about our little ones and our big ones, about how do we make sure that there's a way for them to, have fun and move around. So this is all connected, but today it's not possible for me to say exactly what will be open or not.
From City News, will all roads be pedestrian, cyclists only? Which road will be closed to motorists? So,
yeah, it's kind of...
Well, as we answered to La Presse, Avenue Mont-Royal, Wellington Street will be dedicated, de la commune will be dedicated to those, to pedestrians and cyclists, and Sainte-Catherine-Est, and others will come.
Yeah.
We're finding the right fit for larger sidewalks, larger cycling paths, access to delivery, and efficient bus transit. And we're finding the right fit for each section of every street, and further information will come.
Last question from CTV. How will you enforce rules in parks, other public spaces? Will it be police, Cadet, Mobility Montreal? What will fine be like?
There's a lot of things, and we need to as we're moving forward with the COVID and with the more tests being done, I think we're going to have a clear vision of what the summer is going to look like. I've always been clear that to me, closing parks is not an option. It's absolutely not something I want to do, except if I would have to. And this is why I'm asking Montrealers to follow the rules, the recommendation. That being said, the police officers and cadets are there to support. This is where also there might be more people involved this summer to do to raise awareness. And also people, I'm asking people while trying to keep their 2 meters distance to also get equipped with a face mask. That definitely will help. But I don't want our city to become a place where, there's a police officer at every corner. We don't even have the capacity for this. So we need to continue to be responsible, to think of others, not to gather. I do not encourage any type of gathering. So it's individual responsibility, and it's also kind of a community responsibility. And I think that what I'm announcing today is part of that. If for a lot of people, the only option is to go in a park, if we give them more options, if there's other things to do than sit in the park, then now I feel like we're talking. Now we're saying to Montrealers, maybe today you want to go for a bike ride, or maybe you want to go for a walk, instead of going and have a picnic in the park. So that's really our state of mind.
And from our last question, are there any special allowance or provisions for the disabled?
For the?
Disabled? Disabled, sorry.
Oh, well, I mean, we will, if there's any money, I'm sorry.
No, provisions or allowances? I don't know.
Well, maybe I can say that giving more space for pedestrian, I think to me is, and I think it makes sense that it will support everybody, including people with disabilities, because they're not stuck on a small sidewalk. So this is great news. And of course, as we're supporting lower rules to put terraces and stuff, there's one thing on which we will not negotiate, and it's following the universal accessibility rules as well. That needs to be respected. So we will do our best to accommodate and work with the businesses, but also making sure that it is accessible to everyone.
Merci tout le monde.
Merci tout le monde.
So thank you, everyone.